Cullen live in 1 minute. Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live at pghcitypaper.com. Email your questions and comments to Lynn at pghcitypaper.com.
Brothers of Thug. It's really interesting.
Oh, I think we're on. The Brothers of Thug, everybody heard you say. Hi, everybody. It's my sister's birthday. It's the last day of July.
Happy birthday, Susan.
Happy birthday, Suze. And, Jess. And it's right there. You can. No?
Yes.
Okay. Never mind us!
We're just fidgeting with our widgets.
Tom Sokolowski, late of the Warhol Museum.
Not the late Tom Sokolowski.
No.
It's the corpse speaking.
Right, no. And moi. Late of every radio station in town and a number of television stations.
She's
come to think
been
of it
around.
Right. Oh, gosh, there were a bunch of people who worked at WTAE television are getting together tomorrow night at a local watering hole.
Oh.
And that's all. We did it once before, and people came from all over the place. I mean, it was so. And
what was your stint? What were the years of your stint there?
Well, but that won't be the demarcation. But the years of my stint
sure.
will be. I mean, I was 1981 to 80 something.
Okay, so it's a good almost 20 years ago for you.
Oh, maybe even 30.
Yeah, maybe even 30. That's true.
Maybe even more than 30. So I heard, some of the old DiNardo's coming, and I don't know. I'm looking forward to it. We're gonna.
Now these are people who mostly live in town, or
most of them live in town, and most of them are no longer in the. I mean, we're talking photographers, editors, trading war story. It'll be fun.
Oh, good.
So I don't know why I just said that. Oh, I said that because we were. So, geez, I hardly want to jump into this, but I think we will.
Good.
Tom, a few days ago. Yesterday?
No,
the day before.
Yeah.
He emailed me and said, "You've got to look at this column by David Brooks. I mean, I think it's brilliant, and I think it's a good fodder for blah, 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 blah." And I knew which one you were talking about because I'd seen it in the New York Times. Mm-hmm. Then I see that it's reprinted in yesterday's Post-Gazette. And because of your nudge on it, I thought, well, maybe I'll go back and take a look at this. Mm-hmm. See, David Brooks, I've sort of stopped reading him a lot because he goes off on these sort of philosopher king things all the time. You know what I mean?
But sometimes you need that.
Well, sometimes you need that, but he's obviously very bright, and he has a hungry head, and then he's an intellectual. You can tell, right? And just sometimes I think, well, I can't use that, whatever he's up to.
Sure.
Right? It's too. So I've sort of.
Too thinky, as one of my students once said.
What, too thinky?
I said, you have to read this article. And he said, "That was too thinky, Mr. Zoglowski." I said, "What the hell? There's no such word as thinky. It's a character on Dr. Seuss or something."
It's when you have to work hard.
Well, yeah,
at it.
exactly.
You know,
Yeah.
my brother's books are thinky books,
Yes.
and I mean really thinky books.
I think the word that's used is heady.
Heady. Or you are also impenetrable.
All right.
Right. I mean, you can have thinky that works.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. No. I think what's interesting is to find who was that guy? I think he was Canadian. You know, the other thing might be on that, we're going off a little, but not really. Someone who's like a public intellectual,
right?
Who can write and think about really substantive,
but make it
ideas, but make it palatable,
accessible.
Michael Ignatieff. Did he write for a Canadian?
Ignatieff or something. I was thinking IGNA.
Well,
I don't know.
Yeah, but I don't know if he worked for the Globe and Mail or was Boston. Well, anyway, but I always found his columns just so amazing.
He's so smart. But yeah, when you're so smart, it's sometimes hard to. It's not that you have to speak down.
No,
you have to have a real good
communion.
sense.
Wasn't the line you told Adlai Stevenson, who, you know, the second time he ran for president, again didn't get the thing. It was someone, I don't know if it was a former president, but he was sitting with Adlai Stevenson. And I think it was that famous time when they showed him with the hole in his shoe. And he said, "Adlai, when you can speak to the man on the street and he can understand you, that's when you will be president." I mean, Stevenson was a brilliant guy.
Right, but he wasn't.
But he just never clicked, you know.
And he was also running against
a
war
Titans.
hero.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, exactly. So, what is the funny line of? Never mind. I'm starting to think of Adlai Stevenson quotes now. So I have, any of you who listen on a regular basis know, not said a lot about any of the horror. The world really seems to have exploded.
Apart,
yeah, I mean, and I've really made an effort to avoid. I found, believe me, there's plenty to talk about if you don't go there, if you don't go to the Middle East, if you don't go to Gaza, if you don't go to Ukraine, if you don't
or our border with
or
Mexico.
You don't go to the border, or you don't go to Africa now with this Ebola scare.
God.
And that's a that's a big
I read the
story.
piece the other day where was that online, and this woman were the American guy who died, and she said, "Oh my God, you know, as much as I'm bereft," but she said if my husband had come home, we were about to have this birthday party.
We all be dead.
Yeah, I mean,
his wife.
Because it's so incredibly contagious. At least from
incredibly contagious, and don't have a clue how to cure it.
And supposedly, unlike other, the good thing about it is, unlike other things like a cold, you're usually contagious before you start sneezing, and once you start sneezing, and that you're not contagious anymore. But Ebola,
you're not contagious until you show symptoms.
So that's
at least you have a chance.
Yeah. To lock the person up or whatever.
I'm being told our video feed is stopped.
Oh dear. I think it's our combined beauty.
Yes, right.
Overwhelmed at the power of such pulchritude.
It was, It was there when.
Or maybe it's Hamas. Just we were going to talk about that. They sent us a jolt through the tunnel on
God.
Strawberry Way. Wouldn't it be great if you could go from Gaza and come up on the Strawberry Way? That's almost like a Harry Potter movie.
Well, listen, the way things are going in this world, it could happen.
Well, it would sort of get things a little bit going in Pittsburgh, wouldn't it? Something to laugh about, but it is.
So one of the things for me that makes it tough to talk about specifically Gaza, Israel, is... Well, there's a number of things, but I probably have more of a sense of history of that place and the complexities of the politics than most people do, just because I am interested in it. It is something I do carefully watch.
And you've been there, yes?
Yes, I've been there a few
times.
Adds. Right. I just have a stronger sense of it. And throughout my career in front of a microphone, I have suffered through I don't know how many conflagrations like this, right? And every time they happen, I mean, I just sort of hunker down because the emotion on both sides immediately goes to 110%.
Well, yeah, because if you look at it very simplistically, we both, if you think it's true, want our home. And on that, it's hard to argue with either.
That's right.
Forget the history and how
right.
47,
right.
but we want our home.
That's
and
right.
who doesn't say that?
Right. And this is one of those people most people, and the thing is they get so sure of how to fix this. And I get so nuts. I was with a brilliant guy the other day, and with a great heart. Mm-hmm. And he said, it's those settlements in the West Bank. If they would just get out of those settlements, it would stop. And I didn't even know where to start with him. I said, well, okay, then let's go back before even the first settlement was ever built on the West Bank.
I guess I would amend.
Was there peace?
Yeah, I would amend his comment to saying, that's silly.
And this has nothing to do with what's going on now.
But the only thing I would say is, where it does touch me off, is like every time there's some new thing, 4 more settlements.
More settlements.
I mean, that's
built.
really
I know it drives
salt in the wound.
No, it just drives. No, it drives. I think it drives a lot of people crazy, including people who are staunch supporters of Israel.
Yes, of course.
Okay. So, I mean, here's this brilliant guy, and he's saying to me, if they just would pull out of the West Bank, apparently he thinks there'd be peace on earth.
Right.
It has nothing to do with it.
Right.
They've been killing each other there since decades and decades and decades before.
Well, and the interesting thing, what brought me to suggest.
Video should be back, by the way.
Video should be back. Maybe Joe, you can let us know. Okay.
No, but the reason I was so taken by it, not only the words of Donald Brooks, but the fact that what he was talking about was that it isn't as simple as just Hamas versus Israel, because it is about all of the players. I mean, as most of you know, since our listeners are very smart people, it's about now Egypt taking the side.
It's about Saudi Arabia.
It's Saudi Arabia.
And Egypt really on Israel's side.
Right.
Now,
which you would think
that can blow somebody's head off. Right?
Yeah.
Do you understand how the players line up here, guys? So, it's not even. And what Brooks' article sort of wants to say, and does extremely well, is that the entire context of this Israel-Palestinian thing.
In an area that's about the size of Vermont, between the two of them.
I don't even think it's that. No,
maybe
it's
not
even that big.
But I'm saying a little part of that world.
It's like this little speck of this huge part of the globe, the Middle East, is always where everybody's attention goes. It's where, and don't think this isn't a big part of why it always gets covered. Why we've gotten a skewed view that this is the most outrageous thing happening. This is where all the killing is going. It's because Israel is the only place where all these media organizations, the Times, the Times of London, the Times of New York,
and whatever.
ABC, NBC, CNN,
and have the ease of really getting to view everything.
They have bureaus there.
Right.
Why do they have bureaus there? Well, for a lot of reasons. First of all, it is the only country in the Middle East that has much, even maybe more so than this country, a totally free press.
Yes, right.
Okay? So they can operate fully. So they're all there. Yeah. And when anything happens there, They're all there.
Well, and then also further to that, and because of it, so it's chicken and egg, we have had such a strong America as a nation, both popularly and politically, such a strong connection to Israel. If we didn't, I don't think, even given what you've said, there would be so much. I mean, like Britain.
But I do want to make clear that when the networks, the old media, when they used to have bureaus, back in the good old days, they had bureaus, and they had a Berlin bureau, Paris bureau, a London bureau, a Hong Kong bureau. They were set and ready to go and cover. And then, of course, they weren't making as much money, and so the
it's funny,
and all the bureaus went away.
The national CBS News the other night, and they were talking about, of course, this. And there was the guy who was in Tel Aviv, and there was the guy who was in Gaza, and there was the guy who was in Egypt, and they all were commenting. No, to me, the most interesting thing of all of this is, and it's a real conundrum, because part of it deals, because of all these players, we suggested Hamas not being on the outs with Egypt and Saudi Arabia, it goes against the notion of this monolithic Islamic state, which is even made more intense because of this ISIS proclamation that has caused a lot of mess in the whole Islamic world. But on the other side, you have people wanting a sort of confraternity, one voice of the Islamic world, when point of fact, each of these countries have their own, sometimes very clear and very good, sometimes terribly dictatorships, but have their own views of it. So you have, the Sunnis versus the Shiites versus, so we can be in confraternity with Iran on this one issue and nothing else.
That's right.
Or now this Kurdish oil that's sitting in the bay in Houston or whatever that they want to sell and the government won't let them sell. I thought, oh, God, someone's going to bomb that freighter. We're going to have oil in the
Essentially what
Mexico.
Brooks is saying, if you're looking at Israel-Gaza and what's happening there now, and you're looking at it as somehow independent of this huge struggle going on among Muslim nations in the Middle East, then you ain't looking at it right. He said they talk about the fact that the Arab world right now, it's really the Arab world pretty much. I guess the Iranians aren't Arabs.
Yeah, they're not Arabs.
And the Turks aren't also.
No. It's really sort of the Islamic world.
The Islamic world, but then the Islamic world goes over to Malaysia and
Africa.
But
Indonesia is the biggest
that's right. Well, that's true.
Of Muslims.
What you got going on in the world, which is causing so much of the trouble, it's why you got to take your shoes off when you go to the airport in this country. It's why...
And soon there'll be rectal searches.
Right. It is all a result of what is essentially a struggle for control of the Islamic world.
Right.
And it's a struggle between Islam, amongst Islam, among Arab populations.
What's interesting to me when you were saying about, we always focus on this part of the world because of to me, the other part in the first part of the 20th century that was pre-Israel was Central Europe. Because you have, what became Yugoslavia, all these countries with all these ethnic groups that hated one another for religious reasons, for ethnic reasons. Then, we get communism, and all of a sudden they have to like one another.
Right.
And the minute the glasnost and all of that, they break apart, and then, of course, we all know what happened in the late 80s, 90s. There, that was like one of the most horrific things.
Right.
And it's those parts of the world where you have these little countries, each of which gets its own little dictator, who wants his own, and then he finds out, well, I've got a lot of Shiites there. So, Maliki has just been screwing, the rest of other sects, and why he's so hated in Iraq, and why many other countries are now sort of going against Iraq because he has been such a bastard.
Who?
The president of Iraq.
Maliki.
Because he's just focusing on
his
fundamentalist Christians,
right.
for example.
He's
yeah.
only letting Shia,
right.
Okay, so Brooks delineates all of these clashes. There is a Sunni-Shia war going on, and he says the nation of Iraq essentially doesn't really exist as it did. It's pretty much. It's going to become exactly what I think Joe Biden suggested we let happen.
Right.
3 different countries.
Right.
You give the Sunnis one, you give the Shiites this, and then the Kurds over there. Okay, because there is no real nation there anymore.
And the Sunnis get power because the biggest Sunni place is Saudi Arabia, and they have all the money.
Yeah.
And they have been for years funneling money into Sunni governments all around the world.
But back to who listens.
Buzzing.
I mean, why we're so focused. The world is focused on what's going on in Israel. Israel's always the one that gets, you know, if Israel kills...
Where the shit hits the fan.
That's right. It always is. And we can talk about why that is for a lot of reasons, too, because there's other shit going on there, too. Make no mistake.
Of course.
Then... do you realize that while all of us were looking at and tearing our hair and pounding our breasts and saying, oh, God, how can they do this? Why won't it stop? In Gaza, in 2 days when I think 60 people were killed in Gaza that day or something.
In that school or
whatever. Horror.
Yeah.
Guess what? There were over 200 people killed in Syria in the same day. Did you see one
nothing
story about it? And
we're
that
bored
is
with Syria now in the news.
No, we're bored.
It's true. I think we sort of say, let's put Syria on the back.
No,
we're
Arabs killing Arabs do not constitute news.
Yeah.
And yet, if you want to, these death tolls that they keep coming up, which make Israel look really bad because they ain't dying like they're supposed to die, okay? So,
and the number's
my
high.
God, then it's really an outrage. You got 1,000 plus, Gazans, and you got, just almost, you get closing in on 100 Israelis, which for them is a huge count, actually. Sure. So, the world looks and says and sees Israel as this
bully,
horrible. I mean, they're beyond horrible. But if you dare to look at how many children have been killed in the same period in the last 2 goddamn weeks, Muslim on Muslim.
Yeah. Well, the other part, and I can't...
But so why... There is no fucking context to any of this. Americans watching this and Europeans watching it become a bunch of idiots is what they're idiots.
Well, one interesting thing, and I can't remember if it's Brooks who brings this up or something I read yesterday, either online or maybe in one of the papers, they make the point that because right now Hamas is totally out of money, that, but that perhaps the instigation of this current warette
was to get some money.
Well, to start it and then to, exactly.
There's no doubt Hamas started this.
Well, and then the other part that they've said is, for all of Israel's very focused when they go on these little wars, if you will, we know that they have, Hamas has said they would use people and kids as human shields.
They do.
And it's been proven that Israel will call up or drop leaflets and say, get on a shady side tomorrow because we're bombing. That's pretty good. I mean, the enemy doesn't normally do that.
Enemies don't normally call and say, we are about to send missiles in your neighborhood.
Yeah, right.
And, of course, things do go awry.
Of course.
However, it is well known. That Hamas's strategy, overwhelming evidence, I just want to read this because this guy put it very well, that Hamas does deliberately put its weaponry in neighborhoods with hospitals,
Right.
with schools, because they're thinking, all right, here, we got them here.
Bomb them,
if they bomb them, they look bad. We've got some dead kids, but you know, dead kids are good for us.
Oh, yeah. Well,
And
there's this wonderful picture in this morning's Times, a color picture of 3 teachers in black,
looking at
the blackboard, like, oh, knowledge. I mean, it's a great picture. I would have used it too, but
so
yeah,
Bill Clinton recently said that Hamas has a strategy that is clear. You can see it if you know the damn history and have watched it over the years. It is a strategy to essentially force Israel to kill Palestinian civilians so that the rest of the world will rise as one at the horror of these despicable Israelis who kill innocent children. That's the strategy.
But what's interesting about
So what's Israel supposed to do?
Well, no, but the other interesting thing is when you said that, though, I
do?
was thinking, and you know more about this part of the world than I do, but when you think about that, you know, the 7-Day War, the blah, 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 Yom Kippur War, and blah, 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 in most instances, the rest of the world hasn't gone. I mean, it's really been fought just within those, you know, limits. I mean, you don't have American forces or German forces or whatever forces.
No one in their right mind.
Well,
would
I
get
know,
in the middle
but
of that.
no. But I'm just saying that from the point when you said everyone would rise up, they really don't. There may be all this Schreigewalting, to use a great Yiddish term, you know, screaming in the eye, but other than sanctions in the UN Security Council, there really is no palpable.
From the beginning of Israel.
Yeah.
The Arab states surrounding it, and they were all autocratic states, right?
Yeah.
They saw this bunch of Jews sitting in the middle. They saw that as a great tool for them, and so they have distracted their own people often. When things are not going well, they start talking about, the terrible plight of the Palestinians, and look at those terrible Israelis, and then have started something up again. The Arab world has done absolutely nothing. Do you know this? Has done next to nothing to really provide aid to the Palestinian people.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
They haven't done. Because it doesn't benefit them.
Yeah, it doesn't benefit them.
They need these poor Palestinians to die every once in a while. It is the most cynical crap that goes on. And I mean, I just see people. Yes, go ahead, caller.
Good morning.
Hi.
Hey, I think President Obama has taken this situation and done the right thing and staying out of it. I mean, he's involved a little bit, but the man is using his head on this one. If it would have been Romney in there or McCain, we'd be in trouble right now. We'd be in all kind of wars.
Yeah.
I wish the United States would become isolationists and just get the hell out of all of it, pull all the way back 500 miles from our borders and stay there and let them fight and kill one another, and we'll blow them up after if they cause us any problem. This bullshit of getting involved in all this shit over there, who cares? I've disconnected myself from that shit long ago. 238 years, we figured it out.
Well,
our
you know,
country.
They've
been fighting forever and ever.
Well,
I mean, so you can't deal with people like that. They're jerks, and that's all you can say.
Well, you know what's very interesting is up until quite recently, really up until Vietnam, well, maybe Korea, both, because I've been very interested, and it's very funny, we're not very interested in this now, but the rest of the world is celebrating in a major way the anniversary, the 100th anniversary of
World War I.
And in both major wars, America did not enter until very late. I think in World War I, we didn't enter until
it was pretty
17.
almost over. We were just in it for a year and a half.
And even World War II had been going on for 2-3 years. I mean, the Blitz, whatever, until we entered. So this gentleman's comment about isolationists, well, we really were up until Korea.
Yeah. And
which
you
is
know
an
what?
interesting, or until we were bombed at Pearl Harbor.
And may I get this off my chest?
Yes, you may. Your ample chest. The bosom of the scold.
My usual cohort, the lefties,
Yes.
Well, I'm not really a lefty. I'm a liberal. The lefties, they can anytime they see absolutely never anything that Israel to them is the worst nation on earth. And right now, the lefties, why do I think there's a phone open? Thank you. What was I going to say? There's so much to say. Oh, Hamas. So, tell me, do you have any sense who Hamas is? Or what Hamas is? Do you wonder why the Egyptians and the Saudi Arabians are actually gleeful that the Israelis are trying to take them out?
Before you continue, I have just a question for you, and I don't know this. When did Hamas become the leading power in
Gaza?
In Gaza?
Through an election. This is.
Well, but how long ago, though, was this?
This was George W. Bush's,
Yeah.
we were bringing democracy all over the place,
right.
and we said you should have an election.
Right, that's right.
I'm sure we pressured Israel. Let them have an election, okay?
Well, now, who was
the PLO, the Palestine Liberation Organization, was the government in Gaza and in the West Bank. What happened is Hamas comes and says, they're a bunch of wusses. Yeah. They ain't doing this right. Death to Israel. We're never going to allow it to exist.
And what was the guy's name, PLO? I can see his face.
Arafat.
Yeah, Arafat. That's
okay.
Right.
So Hamas wins.
Right.
The minute Hamas now is the government of Gaza, Israel is freaked. With reason.
With reason, right.
With reason. And the reason has, and who is Hamas? How do they get their money? They are a surrogate of, again, of Iran.
Right.
Who is Israel's biggest enemy? Iran.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? The two entities that have literally been very clear about Israel.
Mm-hmm.
Iran, Hamas.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to obliterate it. Okay? And they will not back off that.
But now...
money. Also, Hamas, the Arab world, this thing in the Arab world between these Islamists who have come... It's the war in Syria now. The troubles in Libya. Have you looked at Libya lately?
No.
All right. The conflagrations we've seen in Egypt with now the autocrats back in power and getting the Islamists back out. The ISIS, which we've come to know. ISIS, Hamas, the same.
Mm-hmm.
But Hamas are the people. When all you lefties, when Hamas, when you get to the point where you give Hamas the ability to do what they want to do, which is attempt to destroy Israel, and let's say they manage the job, after they get done killing all the Jews, you know who they want to kill too? You.
Mm.
Do you not get what the fuck was 9/11?
Mm. Well, what's also very interesting is the fact that with Iran now flipping, I mean, what is very clear, and this is where, funny, going back to the gentleman caller about the, I thought gentleman caller made me think of Tennessee Williams. We are not being isolationists in the sense that our economic, what do you call this?
Interests.
No. But when we put up a barrier, what do you call that?
Sanctions.
Sanctions. Thank you very much. Against Iran, I mean, they are getting really up the ass.
They're getting hurt,
and that's why they are now turning with Egypt against Hamas. And I think what's very interesting is the economics.
Iran's not going with Egypt.
I think so. Are you sure about that?
No.
Well, maybe I'm wrong, but I thought I read something yesterday.
No. I don't think so. The people who have harmed Hamas more than Israel, if Hamas is desperate for money.
Yeah.
Okay, you know what happened to Hamas? Why they're desperate for money? Because almost half of their economy was fueled by tunnels.
Yes, right.
Tunnels, not going into Israel so they can kill Israelis. No, that was not the commerce. The tunnels, they had gazillions of tunnels into Egypt on their north.
And these were huge tunnels.
Unbelievable. I mean, well, so are these. So they're all with lighting, the whole thing. And Iran had a lot to do with funding a lot of that, but so did this commerce with Egypt. And as soon as the Muslim Brotherhood was out, the Egyptian government absolutely Israel's are, those tunnels are blocked, and there's no commerce there. Here's the other thing. When there was commerce there, when there was money coming in, Hamas is the government of Gaza.
Right.
What did that government in Gaza do with the money? Did they build
Swiss bank accounts?
No. Did they build bomb shelters for their people?
No, of course not. Yeah.
There's not a one.
No,
did they build bomb shelters for their people? No. Did they in any way seek to make the lives of these poor Gazans better through social services, through this or that?
Exactly.
Not much. With the money, they built tunnels and bought missiles.
Yeah, and those are all coming in through the tunnels and armaments or whatever, yeah.
So, Israelis are not dying in the numbers that the Gazans are. Why is that? Because the Israeli government is a real government that takes care of its people. And there's a bomb shelter every 5 feet in that country. You hear a siren go off, you can get to cover within 20 seconds. So, Israel now is condemned because their body count isn't very high. They should be condemned for, in fact, and their missiles, damn it, are attempted very clearly to be targeted at places they need.
But as you put earlier, if you put your bomb store right next to a school, the chances are.
And let's think about Hamas's rockets. The thousands and thousands that they have been shooting into Israel. They're not targeted at anything.
Yeah. Well, because
what are the tunnels for?
Is it just scattershot?
Okay.
Or are they really bad?
Okay, here's the other question, and I say this to the isolationist caller, too. I say this to anybody. If the country you live in were under attack or threatened by another country next door lobbing missiles or coming out of tunnels in the middle of the night and kidnapping and grabbing people and or killing people while they sleep, what would you want your government to do? What would you expect your government to do to stop it? And the president has said, and so many others have said, what the fuck are the Israelis supposed to do? They have abided by every ceasefire that's been called. They have. The Egyptians, have tried to. The Egyptians can't broker anything now.
Right.
John Kerry can't broker anything. No, but nobody can. Yeah. This is a war, and who was quoted in this article? Richard Haas of the Council on Foreign Relations has said, look, what is happening? We are seeing the very beginning of what he's, I think, optimistically calling a 30-year war. An overlapping series of clashes and proxy wars that could go on for decades and will transform maps and political contours. It involves the Sunni Shia bloodletting. It involves the Arab authoritarian regimes, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Jordan, and the Emirates, looking at these Islamic regimes in terror. You see the Islamic regimes, you wouldn't want to live in one of those countries. In fact, if you were anything but a Muslim of the right stripe, you'd be dead. Christians are running for their lives. Jews are running for their lives. Oh, maybe not the Emirates. The Emirates are a little different.
They have a lot of money, too.
That's right.
Because Qatar has been
the Saudi-Iranian rivalry. Those are two huge behemoths, and believe me, they hate each other's guts. That's a Sunni Shia thing, too. Yeah, that's right. And you're looking at a huge region of which Israel is a little teeny part, which is going through a compulsive and convulsive period.
And it's holding its own.
And the Palestinian thing has always been used as a... Hey, oh my God, look at those Jews! They're doing it again to the poor Palestinians, who we keep in refugee camps in our country for the last 70 years because to integrate them into our society would take from us this great little scab we love to pick at when things are going badly. We talk about the Palestinians when Israel came in. A lot of Palestinians lost their homes, there's no doubt, and their land. Sure. Does anyone talk about all the Jews in Morocco, Libya, Egypt, Turkey, Iran? You name those countries who ran for their fucking lives, leaving everything they owned behind. Two, you can't, this part of the globe, but I'm sorry, it makes me crazy. There are more fucking fools who are so certain of what's going on there and how to fix it. And I think most people, including probably me, would be well advised to shut up and maybe read and read and read and read. You're not getting educated about what's happening watching CNN or watching MSNBC or watching Fox. You are not. You are just getting, there's no context. You are getting nothing but confused. And don't think CNN doesn't love this shit, too. Yeah. Oh, they love this. Give me bloody bodies.
Well, of course, right.
Lynn and Tom, as you are more familiar with the Israeli-Hamas struggle than the average Joe, I am slightly more familiar with the Irish troubles. The only thing that stopped the criminal Jerry Adams, well, we see which side you were on, the criminal Jerry Adams and Sinn Féin bosses, was when their money was threatened after 9/11. Much like Hamas, the money perpetuated the struggle because peace made them irrelevant. The war cry of get England out of Ireland was as insincere as get the settlements out of the West Bank. The freedom fighters of Ireland and the freedom fighters of Palestine eventually became hoodlums.
Yeah.
Stop the money, you'll stop the war. Make Hamas a terrorist it is a terrorist organization. Lefties think they're good guys.
Well, not all.
They're rooting for them.
Well,
Hamas, a terrorist organization and not a political one. Exactly. And by the way, remember those English devils started this shit long ago.
Well, that's true.
Well I would have said that was a problem that would never be solved, is Ireland.
Yeah,
the Irish.
Right.
And
in
our lifetime, that has gotten
Did you read there was
resolved.
about a month ago this case of a woman who was killed, who was pulled out of a house like 30 years ago, and taken away and killed
Yes.
because they
Yes.
thought she was her
Right.
husband or whatever, was
No,
a collaborator.
right.
And it turns out she wasn't. But, he was absolutely right. There were
Unbelievable.
thugs. I mean, one thing I'm going to put in a cheap aspect to this, but I think it's sort of interesting. It's not the factual thing, but I was just telling Lynn before we started, there's a TV show, which some of you may have seen on this summer on FX called Tyrant. And it's a dramatization, but sort of a docudrama, if you will, about a created country in the Middle East. And a man who has been president, very much like Saddam Hussein or what's his name, Gaddafi, has been ruling, and he's celebrating his birthday, and one of his sons, an American, left when he was a young boy because his father was this dictator. And he goes to America, becomes a doctor, never goes back, never corresponds, and now all of a sudden, no, it's a wedding, I'm sorry, not a birthday. So his family, they go there and visit. He has 2 children, and he goes to visit, and of course, all hell breaks loose. The father dies, and now all of a sudden, the elder brother who stayed there, who's been one of these thug, rich boy, president's son, who has mistresses and all this business, he is now president. And he asks his American brother to stay. Please help him. And of course, what's happening is, and it's very interesting, because they keep referring to, like, oh, look what happened to Gaddafi, oh, look what happened to Saddam Hussein, etc. And this notion of this country trying to look at democracy, and this brother, the one who is now president, Jamal, when his immediate reaction is like, take the police and beat the shit out of the protesters. And the army is behind him. And the American brother, who he gives a title of advisor to the president, is saying, well, let me go talk to those people. Our father was our father, and he created this nation. There was a certain amount of democracy, but also he gassed this one town. And it
sounds like it's more based on Hafez al-Assad, because, his father...
all those, yeah.
I mean, Hafez al-Assad, and his son, he was a dentist, wasn't he? I mean,
I think so, yeah.
And he was sort of meek and this and that,
Yeah.
and now he's...
But it's very interesting because...
as much of a...
What's very interesting about this show is whenever the American tells us, and he's like saying, well, like, you could be seen as the new Arab world, you're going to be, this, and he says, let's now say you'll have elections, which the other side wants. And then the guy who is the head of he's been out of the country for exile for 20 years, he comes back in and he meets with this person, he's the president, and he's saying, like, well, the person who really made me come to these meetings was your brother. And maybe he's really the power behind the throne. And then you see, just when the father's dying on his deathbed, he says to the American guy, you should have been the one, not Jamal, who followed me. You're the one. And it's very interesting because it plays across that whole notion of, like, American support, someone maybe who has an enlightened idea, but then is fearful of uprising.
The reaction to it. Yeah, well, okay.
And it's very well played out.
When do we figure out that you cannot overlay our sensibilities, Western sensibilities, atop these cultures?
Well, and early on, our people were, I mean, when you look back at it for all the good things, Washington was not the most fabulous person. Jefferson had slaves and was quite brutal towards them. So even democracy does not happen overnight.
Well, yeah. I mean, yeah. And we could argue that we've already lost ours. It's obviously very difficult to hang on to because we now have essentially a plutocracy. Mm-hmm. Clarence has sent me this. He says it's pertinent to what you're talking about. This is from Sam Harris.
I'm not sure who that is.
He's a lefty.
One of your favorites.
Isn't he a lefty, Sam Harris?
I'm not sure.
What do we know of the Palestinians? What would the Palestinians do to the Jews in Israel if the power imbalance were reversed? Well, they have told us what they would do. For some reason, Israel's critics just don't want to believe the worst about a group like Hamas, even when it declares the worst of itself. We've already had a Holocaust and several other genocides in the last century. People are capable of committing genocide. When they tell us they intend to commit genocide, we should listen.
That's what shrinks always say. Listen to what people say.
Listen to what they're saying. There is every reason to believe that the Palestinians would kill all the Jews in Israel if they could. Would every Palestinian support genocide? Of course not. But vast numbers of them, and of Muslims throughout the world, would. Needless to say, the Palestinians in general, not just Hamas, have a history of targeting innocent non-combatants in the most shocking ways possible. I'll give you the opera you have given me.
Oh, right.
Klinghoffer. Right?
Yeah, the death of Klinghoffer.
The death of Klinghoffer. Okay, I'm just saying.
John Adams, yeah.
The Palestinians, and that was the PLO.
Yes, right.
And not just Hamas, but a history of targeting innocent non-combatants in the most shocking ways possible. They've blown themselves up on buses and in restaurants. They've massacred teenagers. They've murdered Olympic athletes at the Olympics. They now shoot rockets indiscriminately into civilian areas. And again, the very charter of their government in Gaza explicitly tells us that they want to annihilate the Jews, not just in Israel, but everywhere. And then he's very careful here. He says, note, again, I realize that not all Palestinians support Hamas, nor am I discounting the degree to which the occupation, along with collateral damage suffered in war, has fueled Palestinian rage. But Palestinian terrorism and Muslim anti-Semitism is what has made peaceful coexistence thus far impossible. The truth is that everything you need to know about the moral imbalance between Israel and her enemies can be understood on the topic of human shields. Who uses human shields? Well, Hamas certainly does.
The Nazis didn't do that from up on the...
They shoot their rockets from residential neighborhoods, from beside schools and hospitals and mosques. Muslims in other recent conflicts in Iraq and elsewhere have also done the same. They have laid their rifles on the shoulders of their own children and shot from behind their bodies.
Can I make an interruption there? I think part of that, if one needs to understand this completely, is some people read the Quran in certain ways that to be a martyr for the faith is a very noble thing. So in addition to the brutishness and all that, there is that kind of, not scripture, but scriptural reading that would support this, that it's a good thing to be a martyr.
Well, and that's why you see sometimes mothers of suicide bombers saying, crowing.
Well, that line that's always quoted about, you will be met by 30 doe-eyed virgins and whatever. Now, again, that's just so people are clear.
But
that's the reading of the Quran, not necessarily the Quran itself.
I don't have a clue how this ever... And just understand, the Israelis are surrounded by enemies. Yeah. And it is amazing. It is amazing they've been
When I first moved to New York, I was once in a dry cleaner, and this old Hasidic rabbi was there. And at some point he said to me, we were talking about something, and he said, why couldn't we have chosen someplace in Switzerland in 1947? And I said, Rabbi, you're very wise.
No.
Although they probably wouldn't have done well there either.
I mean, to say that the reason Israel was chosen, first of all, there are already a lot of Jews there. And
the Holy Land,
historically, it's our homeland. Right. And there'd never been a homeland. And you see what has happened to Jews in the last 2 millennia is they have not been able to have security in any country. Except so far this one.
Yeah. Well, it was very funny. A friend of mine, some years ago, said to me, we were talking about something, Israel and what have you, and she had visited. I think her kids had gone on kibbutz experiences, whatever. But we were talking about something, and I remember someone in the group was saying, like, oh, my God, give me so much money. And she said, I will never move to Israel. But she said, I love the idea that if I need to. And that sort of struck me. I hadn't thought about that because obviously the Holocaust.
You think Jews don't think that?
Well, that's the point I'm making.
Right. Hey, go ahead, caller.
Yeah, Clarence from Gansburg. Sorry to bother you.
Yeah.
I just wanted to, because of what you're talking about now, after reading that part of Sam Harris, is to read the whole article. I sent the link when you get a chance. It's long.
Okay, it's a lot more.
It's a lot more.
Okay, now explain. Sam Harris is, I know the name.
He wrote The End of Faith. He's one of the four horsemen.
Oh, that's right.
He's like a prominent atheist is what he's known
that's
for.
Right, that's right. That's right.
But, the whole article was, I didn't even think about it, not talk about it or anything else because I know, how people get really emotional about the whole thing. Mm-hmm. But that was the best thing that I ever seen written on the subject. Because most of the lefties, and Sam's not a lefty, support Hamas, but they don't pay attention. And
they refuse. They cannot jump on Israel enough. Yeah. And they cannot look clearly at the people they're supporting. Yeah. They're so emotional, they create more of this death by falling for the strategy that Hamas has. And it will continue to be used because the left is always sure. I was getting bits from the Thomas Merton Center, who I have supported in many respects. And they sent me something the other day as rally to stop the massacre, the this, the that. It was so over the top.
In that article,
that's it.
And Clarence, where does this article appear?
On his blog, Sam Harris's blog.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. He wrote it on a blog, and I think it actually was reprinted like in Salon or something like that.
Oh, okay.
But on his, I'm one of those people. I kind of, subscribe to him. So anytime he,
I see.
has something, I get it. Mm-hmm. But something else he pointed out. He said, if Israeli wanted to kill innocent people, they can easily do it.
Yeah,
but
sure.
And I said, that's why I tell people, I was like, do you think, that they're not trying not to kill women and children? Mm-hmm. I said, because if they wanted to, they could wipe that whole thing off the map in a day.
Yeah, sure.
Correct.
Exactly.
I said, so you got it. They said they could do it easily.
Right.
In a day. You just start.
I heard somebody who understood this saying, I know you'll think I'm joking, but I would give the Israeli Defense Forces the Nobel Peace Prize, which I think is going a little too far.
And one of the most, I think, important things over and above the death numbers, which are horrific, of course, but is the fact that there was something in the paper yesterday that they think, now this is through Hamas, but they think it could take up to a year to get all the electrical plants going again just to provide electricity.
No, you know who's providing electricity for them now?
Israel's providing.
Israel is they. Yeah. Oh, those killers of all the children know that they can't. The sewage plant isn't working anymore. Nothing's working because of the bombing of the. Right. And they are getting now. All the electrical supply, almost all the electricity in Gaza right now is coming from the Israelis.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, places like the Thomas Merton Center. People on the left, they see the Palestinians as like the underdog.
That's
you know what I mean?
They always go with what they think is the underdog.
Yeah.
I got news for you. The underdog in that neck of the world is Israel.
Well,
always has been.
The underdog, the Palestinian hoi polloi, maybe the underdog.
Yes.
The government is the underdog. There's a difference.
All right, no. The poor Palestinian people have been fucked with by, here's what the Thomas Merton Center folks don't realize, have been more fucked with by their Muslim brothers
their leaders,
than by anything the Israelis ever did to them. But anyway, hey, thank you. I appreciate it. Okay, I just want to get back to this David Brooks just to finish off so you get it. He says, after the Egyptians, it's what the Egyptians did that has economically devastated Hamas because they closed down the tunnels that Hamas is so good at building into Egypt. Hamas needed to end that blockade, but it couldn't strike Egypt. So it struck Israel. because this is their figuring. If Hamas could emerge as the heroic fighter in a death match against the horrible Jews, then Arab television screens and American television screens would be filled with these horrific pictures that we are seeing of dead Palestinian children, and then public outrage would arise, and the civilian casualties were part of the deal. How many people do we have to tell us this? Hamas remains committed to the absolute destruction of the Jewish state. Make no mistake of that. But Hamas is firing rockets at Tel Aviv, sending terrorists through tunnels into Israel, while aiming, in essence, at Cairo. This is the proxy aspect, where the Jews become the Jews and the Palestinians are both used by all of these other Arab nations around them. It no longer, he says, the whole conflict has the feel of a proxy war. Turkey and Qatar are backing Hamas in the hopes of getting the upper hand in their regional rivalry with Egypt and Saudi Arabia. The Egyptians and the Saudis are backing and rooting for the Israelis in hopes that the Israelis will do what they want to do and weaken Hamas. It no longer makes sense to look at the Israeli-Palestinian conflict as an independent struggle happening in some kind of a goddamn vacuum. And it is well past time that especially supposedly educated folks in this country bother to educate themselves about this and to stop the knee-jerk response of it's always Israel's fault. That's all I want to say. I can't take it anymore. And I really, and have, by the way, you seen all the stories now popping up about the actually growing, sort of frightening growth of anti-Semitism.
Oh, with all the universities
in Europe.
In Europe, yes, right.
And on our university campuses.
Right. Well, there's been all those votes.
There's been votes and investment. It's like as if Israel is the worst nation on earth. My God, if you were fair-minded and were making a list of the worst nations on earth, those who are the worst places to live for their people, those who commit the most atrocities, Israel wouldn't make the top 100. So why this need to hate that particular state? And you can't blame Jews if they start to think it has something to do with the fact that it's a Jewish state. And you cannot then see this increasing anti-Semitism in Europe, that is barely 2 generations away from cleaning up the cinders of the horrible conflict. Jesus Christ! French Jews are leaving France in numbers they has never seen. They're getting out. They're scared. They're scared their children will be attacked, as they have been. German. Where did I just see something about it's popping back up in Germany in some serious ways? I can't even begin to tell you. And does CNN cover that? The result of all of the lefties in cahoots now with the Muslims and the terrorist organizations? In France, protesters torched cars in Jewish neighborhoods. They destroyed several Jewish-owned stores. They are no longer screaming death to the Israelis on the streets of Paris. They are screaming death to the Jews. And they're screaming it in Germany. And listen to something that was actually, there was a demonstration in Germany where people holding Israeli flags were kicked and beaten. And while the pro-Palestinian protesters, here was one of their chants, Hamas, Hamas, Jews to the gas. There was something happened in Italy yesterday. Here from Germany, and part of this is also because there's such huge Muslim communities now in all of these countries.
Well, because of the colonial.
So you look at France. France has 600,000 Jews.
They have to have at least that many colonial Muslim
you know how
expats.
many Muslims live in France?
Millions.
6
Yeah, I'm not
million.
Surprised. I'm not surprised.
So if you're the French government, and you got 600,000 Jews, and you got 6 million Muslims, there you can see
and then if you look certainly at the Midi, sort of the central part of the country, there's always been where the Pétain government during the war had its stronghold. That's always been very anti-Semitic, like Lyon and South.
Oh no, and so the Jews of Germany are now feeling fear again. And this was written in one of the German papers by somebody who said, Jews, listen to this, Jews are emigrating from France in record numbers. Germany sees its Jews now frightened. And he says Germany simply cannot let this happen. Our history prohibits it. If Jews are hounded out of Germany again, we will have lost our claim to democracy and lost our claim to our soul. This is what's going on in Europe now. And this is I just want to say to my lefties, look at who you're in bed with.
Confrère, yeah.
And look at maybe they're unintended consequences, but the consequences of your hatred of Israel, because it has blurred now in big ways. And Israel and Jew, watch it. I just watch it. So if you see Jews who have always been, more inclined to be lefties starting to desert you, well, you brought it on yourself. Fuck you. Fuck you. So I have stopped all Thomas Merton Center crap coming into me. I'm done. I am done. I mean, to join hands with you is like to join hands with people who are also joining hands with the very people who would kill me without even thinking straight. You embrace Hamas, and I'm supposed to embrace you? Fuck ya. How's that?
Good. And good day to you all. On that ringing.
I'm going to go to Israel and join the IDF. That's what I'm going to do.
No, you should go and join Mossad.
Shit. What a world.
Have a good day.
Yeah. Kiss a Jew.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper, Steel City Media, and its advertisers.